The large numbers of people moving from the East, the Horn of Africa and the Great Lakes regions of Africa to South Africa have led to concerns among the countries of the sub-region about national security, the trafficking of substances, human trafficking, the abuse of the asylum system, resulting in stricter border controls. Now, to talk to us more about World Refugee Day and the work being done by the United Nations High Commissioner for Refugees in Southern Africa, we're joined from our Pretoria studio by Clementine Nkweta-Salami from the Office of the United Nations High Commissioner for Refugees. So thank you so much again for having joined us. Now, just before the break, I mentioned that there is a difference between foreign nationals and immigrants in a country and then asylum seekers and refugees. Just tell us more specifically about the refugees and asylum seekers and how they're defined.
Okay, well, good morning, Ayanda, and good morning to your viewers. I think I watched the program earlier on, and the Director General made a clear distinction between refugees and asylum seekers and other migrants. But perhaps just to point out the differences once again for your viewers, the 1951 Convention defines a refugee as somebody who is outside their country as a result of persecution on the basis of race, religion, nationality, or membership of a particular social group. The 1969 OAU Convention, which is an African convention, and which was in fact established in recognition of the peculiarities and the particular situation of those fleeing their countries in Africa, extends the definition to those fleeing civil conflict and civil disturbance.
What I want to know from you, sorry if I may interrupt there, I'm not sure if you were done with your sentence, but perhaps you can incorporate it in this answer. Some of the animosity arises when, and I'm just referring to some of the tweets, when you get refugees or asylum seekers, then establishing businesses and establishing various economic activity, getting some of their friends and family or relatives to also come through. This is a sentiment I'm sharing from a tweet that we've just received. Are asylum seekers and refugees permitted to engage in economic activity in a country where they are?
Yes, they are. Yes, they are. Countries signatory to the convention usually domesticate the various principles within the convention into national law. If I take the case of South Africa, there is asylum legislation that governs the rights and the conditions of asylum for those who are considered to be refugees on a basis of their status. This Act allows refugees equal rights to those that South Africans enjoy. I think the only right that the Act doesn't grant them is the right to vote. Therefore, they have the right to be educated, they have the right to set up small businesses in conformity with the law, because South Africa law governs the establishment of small businesses and other enterprises. So refugees have those rights, but as all individuals resident in South Africa, they must comply with the law.
How difficult or perhaps easy is it to integrate a refugee or an asylum seeker to the host country? We've seen the likes of xenophobic violence and attacks in South Africa. Do you think we've done enough as a country, as a government and as a citizens to try and foster integration of the refugees and asylum seekers in this country?
I think we have in South Africa a very progressive and, quite frankly, a model legal framework for refugees to be admitted, for their status to be determined, and for them to enjoy their rights. But as in all countries, I think implementation is a challenge. And I think the issue of social integration is something that can always be improved. We have, as we are well aware, incidents of violence against foreigners, asylum seekers, refugees. And this, of course, requires that we turn our attention and we focus more efforts in trying to strengthen their ties with the communities that host them, to foster social cohesion, and also to perhaps explain to these communities why refugees are here. They are here legally, they are here because the government is a signatory to the convention, and as a member of the international community, the South African government has recognized that they have a right to stay here and enjoy rights on par with those of South Africans. Can more be done? I think the answer to your question is yes. More can be done, more should be done.
And tell us a bit about that more that is being done. Maybe you can elaborate on your partnership, the partnership between the UNHCR and the South African government, the Department of Home Affairs, to emphasize the status of refugees in Southern Africa.
We are working, and we will continue to work with the South African government to strengthen the asylum systems, to improve the management of the asylum process, but also to work with communities. To get them to understand who these people are, and also to get refugees to understand the communities in which they are now living. They also have a responsibility. This can be through learning about the cultures, it can be learning the language, but they themselves also have a responsibility to become a part of the communities that are now hosting them. So it's a shared responsibility. UNHCR works with the government. We also have a lot of implementing partners that are trying to foster social cohesion, that are trying to strengthen the possibilities for refugees to access livelihoods and to properly integrate and contribute, because I think it's often forgotten that refugees come with skills, and in as much as the communities host them, they also contribute significantly to the development of these communities with their talents, their resources, their creativity, and also their intellect.
As briefly as possible, Zimbabwean asylum seekers are believed to still represent a large number received by South Africa. Does Zimbabwe still face threats of persecution, conflict and violence?
Well, to be quite honest, in Zimbabwe today, we have all registered significant improvements, but at the same time, we do have individual cases of people who are leaving the country with a well-founded fear of persecution. They come to South Africa as they go to other countries. They have their cases assessed, they have their status determined, and if they are found to meet the criteria, then of course they are granted refugee status. What we have not seen, and what we hope that we will not see, are large movements out of the country. And I think based on the current status and the current situation in Zimbabwe, this is not something that we foresee.
Yeah, no, thank you so much. We'll have to leave it there for now. We do, however, continue with this particular topic for the rest of the show, but I'm going to say goodbye to Clementine Nkweta-Salami from the Office of the United Nations High Commissioner for Refugees, otherwise known as the UNHCR.